I want to kind of shift focus to folks that may be in the investment public that are maybe sitting on the sidelines over the past few years in their investing career and have not wanting to haven't wanted to put money into deals that fed the war regime, that fed the military industrial complex for moral reasons. They don't want to be involved in the perpetual wars. Like, what can businesses do to align themselves either through investments or where they send their products and services, even if a regime may be an ally of ours? How can an ethical framework like just war tradition or just statecraft be employed into a business practices?
Well, this is a very important set of questions because we're a democracy. We believe in limited government. And by limited government, what we mean is we're expecting citizens and groups of citizens, whether it's in the social sector, meaning nonprofit organizations, or in the corporate sector, businesses, or in the education sector, universities, we're expecting them to have a free society as people choosing to act morally, right? This is a profound question. And it's a question that involves rightful patriotism, not xenophobic hypernationalism, but rightful patriotism, and a contribution that scientists and businessmen can make towards national defense, less loss of life, better surveillance of the enemy, better, quicker actions, the protection. There's a lot here, but a simple way of thinking about this is part of the just war tradition is a second question. The first question, when is it just to employ force? The second, what is the morality of how war is fought or how force is employed? So once the decision is made, that is bounded by the principle of military necessity, taking actions where you're trying to win appropriately, which is a stewardship principle. The second is the idea of proportionality. We shouldn't be any more destructive than necessary. We want to limit destruction. And third, the idea of distinction. We can distinguish or discriminate between things that should be off limits, non-combatants, private homes, houses of worship, libraries, hospitals, etc. We can distinguish those from appropriate military targets. There's a difference between a civilian and a lawful combatant. There's a difference between a military base and a private hospital, etc. And so businesses can start by thinking, as we get involved, as we're investing, as we are creating things, are we creating things that fall within these categories of, will they be proportional in their appropriate use, if they're used appropriately? Are they in the hands of a government that acts with proportionality and discrimination? In other words, you could sell a very, very dangerous weapon to the United States government and have a level of trust that they're going to operate by the laws of armed conflict. But you ought not to sell that weapon to Vladimir Putin and the current regime in Moscow. It may not be wise. There should be a limit. You don't want to sell that weapon to the former Assad regime in Syria. You don't want to sell it to Hezbollah. In other words, you don't want to just sell to the highest bidder. Businesses can make decisions about where they invest, what they make available, who they make it available to. And of course, there is some limit, of course, on the use of their technologies. I think about, for instance, companies that were complicit in creating the crematoria and the gas chambers that extinguished so many Jewish lives during the Holocaust and World War II. These were corporations, and they knew what was going on. At least some of their technicians, some of their scientists, and some of their business owners, they knew. They crossed a line. It's perfectly fine to make some of those things for their appropriate use. They should not, even to the point of having to shut down their business, even having to go to jail, etc. Businessmen have a moral conscience. They have a responsibility in society to not aid in the creation of illicit harms.